Ethan sat in the quiet, luxurious cabin of the starship, looking out the large window as the stars drifted by. His heart raced with excitement and anticipation. This was supposed to be the honeymoon of a lifetime, a peaceful, relaxing escape from the hectic political world that had brought him here. He had married Princess Nara of the Zenthari, a beautiful and mysterious alien race, a few weeks ago. It had been an arranged marriage at first, one meant to strengthen the bond between their two worlds. But over time, Ethan had come to love her, not just for her beauty, but for her kindness and intelligence. As the ship neared the Zenthari homeworld, Ethan gazed out at the planet below, a stunning mix of shimmering blue oceans and green continents, the colors reflecting off the light of their sun. He could see why Nara had always spoken so fondly of it. This was the place she had grown up, a place of peace, beauty, and history. Ethan had never expected to be here, but now, standing on the brink of this new chapter in their lives, he couldn't help but feel lucky. The ship's captain came over the intercom, announcing their arrival at the Zenthari capital city, Selkora. Ethan looked over at Nara, who was sitting beside him, her eyes glowing with a mix of excitement and calm. She reached out and gently squeezed his hand. "We're almost there," she said softly. "Are you ready for your first visit to Zenthari?" Ethan smiled, feeling the warmth of her touch. "I think I'm ready for whatever comes next, as long as I'm with you." Nara's smile widened. "You're going to love it here." The shuttle descended through the atmosphere, the landscape of the city growing larger. The palace stood at the center of the capital, its towering spires gleaming in the sunlight. The architecture was unlike anything Ethan had seen on Earth, a stunning blend of alien design and natural beauty. It was like something out of a dream. As the shuttle touched down, Nara stood and helped Ethan gather his things. He felt the weight of the moment as he followed her off the ship and onto the tarmac. There were no crowds waiting to greet them, just a few servants standing by, ready to assist. The palace guards gave them a respectful nod as they walked inside, and Ethan felt a sense of awe as they entered the grand halls of the palace. Nara led Ethan down a long marble hallway, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The walls were adorned with beautiful tapestries depicting scenes from Zenthari history, and the air smelled faintly of flowers and incense. Ethan couldn't help but feel small in this place, surrounded by such grandeur. He had always thought of the palace as a place of power, but now, walking beside Nara, he realized it was also a place of warmth, of family, and of memories. They arrived at a door at the end of the hall, and Nara stopped. She turned to Ethan, her expression softening. "This will be our room for the next few weeks," she said, her voice quiet. "I hope you'll find it comfortable." Ethan smiled and nodded. "I'm sure it will be perfect. But as long as I'm with you, I don't need anything else." Nara's eyes twinkled with affection as she unlocked the door, and they stepped inside. The room was breathtaking. Large windows offered a view of the palace gardens, and the furniture was soft and inviting. The bed was enormous, draped in silken sheets, and the walls were lined with shelves full of ancient books and artifacts. Everything in the room spoke of a history that Ethan could never truly understand, yet he was excited to learn. They spent the first few hours unpacking and settling in. Nara took him on a brief tour of the palace, showing him the grand hall where royal meetings were held and the courtyard filled with exotic plants. Ethan could tell that she was eager to share her world with him, to show him where she had grown up, and he was happy to follow along, asking questions about everything he saw. But there was something in her demeanor that still seemed distant, as if she were holding something back. After the tour, they returned to their room for a quiet dinner. The meal was light but delicious, filled with strange alien dishes that Ethan had never tasted before. Nara seemed to take pleasure in watching him try new things, and he was glad to see her so happy. But as the night wore on, something began to feel a little off. Nara had grown quieter, more distant, and Ethan couldn't quite put his finger on why. They finished their meal, and Nara stood, moving to the door. "I'll be back in a few minutes," she said, her voice softer than usual. "I just need to check something." Ethan nodded, though a strange feeling settled in his chest. He watched her leave, the door clicking softly behind her. He glanced around the room, taking in the grandness of it all. The excitement of the day had worn off, and now a creeping sense of unease settled in. He sat on the edge of the bed, thinking about the events of the day when suddenly he heard the sound of the door unlocking. Ethan stood, his heart skipping a beat, wondering if Nara had returned. But when the door opened, it wasn't Nara who stepped inside. It was her, the alien princess. With a soft smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, she locked the door behind her. She was dressed in a dark, sleek gown that clung to her figure, her long black hair flowing loosely down her back. Her smile was gentle but mysterious, and Ethan could see something in her eyes that he hadn't noticed before, a glint of something he couldn't quite identify. Nara stepped into the room, closing the distance between them. She stopped a few feet away, her hands folded in front of her. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm and almost too composed. "There's something I need to tell you." Ethan's stomach churned. "What is it?" Nara's eyes met his, and for the first time since he'd arrived, Ethan saw a flicker of uncertainty. She paused, as though trying to find the right words. "Ethan, the reason I brought you here isn't just for a honeymoon." She took a step closer, and the atmosphere in the room seemed to shift. "There's something happening on my planet, something that requires our full attention." Ethan's heart raced. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Nara locked eyes with him, her expression unreadable. "We have enemies here, Ethan, and they're closer than you think." Before he could say anything, she walked past him and moved to the window, looking out at the beautiful gardens. "This isn't a vacation, not for me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "There are things going on in my family, in my world, that you're not ready to understand." Ethan stood frozen, unsure of what was happening. His peaceful honeymoon was slipping away, and in its place, an unfamiliar tension filled the room. He knew that Nara was hiding something important, but why hadn't she told him sooner? The door clicked behind them, and Nara turned, locking the door once more. She smiled at Ethan, but it was a smile full of mystery, a smile that held no answers. "I'll explain everything," she said softly. "But for now, you need to trust me." Ethan's mind raced as he watched her. His honeymoon had taken an unexpected turn, and there was no telling where this new journey would take him. One thing was clear, his life with Nara was about to change forever. The night was quiet, almost too quiet. The air in the room was heavy with tension as Ethan stood, staring at Nara. He was still trying to process the words she had just said. Enemies? What enemies? She had spoken so calmly, but there was an underlying urgency in her voice that he couldn't ignore. Ethan's mind raced as he searched for the right questions, but before he could speak, Nara's eyes softened, and she motioned for him to sit. "Please, Ethan, sit down," she said gently, her voice almost apologetic. Ethan hesitated for a moment, but then slowly moved to the edge of the bed. He looked at Nara, trying to read her, trying to understand what was going on. Her usual calm demeanor seemed to be slipping, revealing something deeper, something more complex. He had never seen her like this before. Nara walked over to a nearby table and picked up a small, intricately carved box. She set it down in front of Ethan, her hands shaking slightly as she opened it to reveal a series of strange, glowing crystals. They pulsed softly with an otherworldly light, casting faint, shadows across the room. Ethan leaned forward, captivated by the sight. "These are called the Orcs stones," Nara said, her voice low and serious. "They are ancient relics from my people, passed down through generations. They hold the key to something very important, something I've been protecting for years." Ethan's curiosity grew. He could feel that he was on the edge of discovering something crucial, something that would change everything. "What do these stones have to do with your enemies?" he asked. Nara's gaze turned distant, and she seemed lost in thought for a moment. She took a deep breath before continuing. "Many years ago, my ancestors discovered a powerful secret hidden within the heart of Zenthari, a secret that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. But it was never meant to be shared with anyone. The knowledge was so dangerous that they locked it away, hidden within these stones. The Orc stones are the key to unlocking that secret." Ethan's mind struggled to comprehend what she was saying. A secret that could change the fate of the galaxy, hidden for centuries? "But why didn't you tell me this sooner?" he asked, his voice shaking with a mix of frustration and confusion. "I couldn't," Nara replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "If anyone knew about the stones, they would stop at nothing to get their hands on them. My enemies, they would destroy everything to obtain this power." Ethan leaned forward, his concern growing. "But you're telling me now. Why? Why not wait until we're safe?" Nara looked at him, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Because I trust you, Ethan. I'm not just your wife. I'm the heir to the Zenthari throne, and this," she gestured, "to the stones, is the only thing standing between my people's survival and their destruction." The weight of her words hit Ethan like a tidal wave. He had always known that Nara was special, but he had no idea that her role in this world was so much greater than he had ever imagined. She wasn't just a princess. She was a key figure in an ancient struggle, one that had the potential to shape the future of entire civilizations. "But what about us?" Ethan asked, his voice thick with emotion. "What does this mean for us? For our future?" Nara's face softened, and she walked over to him. She knelt down beside the bed, her eyes meeting his. "I don't know, Ethan. I don't know what's going to happen, but I need your help. Without you, She stopped herself, taking a deep breath. "I can't do this alone." Ethan reached out and took her hand, his mind racing as he tried to process everything. He had come here for a peaceful honeymoon, to be with the woman he loved, but instead, he had been pulled into a dangerous web of politics and ancient secrets. Yet, despite everything, he couldn't bring himself to turn away. Nara was his wife, and he would stand by her no matter what. "I'll help you," Ethan said firmly, his voice steady. "I don't understand everything yet, but I'm with you. I won't let you face this alone." Nara smiled at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Ethan. I don't deserve your trust, but I'll do everything I can to make sure you're safe." As they sat together, the reality of their situation began to settle in. They weren't just a couple on their honeymoon anymore. They were caught in something much bigger, something that could change the fate of both their worlds, and no matter what happened, they would face it together. Later that night, after a long silence, Nara stood up. "I need to show you something," she said, her voice serious. "You need to understand what we're dealing with." Ethan followed her as she led him to a hidden door at the back of the room. It slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a narrow staircase that spiraled down into the darkness. Nara's face was determined as she motioned for Ethan to follow. "Where are we going?" Ethan asked, a sense of unease creeping into his chest. "To a place that no one knows about," Nara answered. "A place where the truth lies hidden, where the fate of my people and your world is decided." They descended the stairs in silence, the only sound their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the bottom, and Nara stopped in front of a massive stone door. It was adorned with intricate carvings and glowing symbols, unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. "This is the Vault of Zenthari," Nara said, her voice filled with reverence. "Only a few people in my family know of its existence. It holds the most dangerous secrets of my people." Nara stepped forward and placed her hand on the door. The symbols glowed brighter for a moment, and with a deep rumble, the door slowly opened, revealing a dark chamber. Inside, shelves lined the walls, filled with ancient scrolls, glowing orbs, and strange artifacts. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and upon it rested a glowing crystal that seemed to pulse with energy. "This is the heart of Zenthari," Nara explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "It holds the power to change everything, and now it is my responsibility to protect it." Ethan stepped closer, his heart pounding in his chest. The crystal seemed to hum with energy, and as he approached, he could feel a strange pull, like it was calling to him. He turned to Nara, who was watching him closely. "You're the only one who can unlock it," she said. "The stones, the Orcs stones, are the key to revealing its true power, but only if they're combined with the heart, and if they fall into the wrong hands." Her voice trailed off, and Ethan could see the fear in her eyes. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. This wasn't just about protecting Nara. It was about protecting an entire civilization from falling into chaos. Ethan glanced at the glowing crystal, and for the first time, he understood just how deep this went. The fate of worlds rested on their shoulders, and there was no turning back. "We have to stop them," Ethan said, his voice filled with determination. "We have to make sure that no one else gets their hands on this power." Nara nodded, her face grim. "Yes, but the hardest part is yet to come. The people who want this power will stop at nothing to get it. They'll come for us, Ethan. And when they do, we have to be ready." As they stood together, the weight of their mission began to settle in. The peaceful honeymoon they had once imagined was now a distant memory, replaced by the harsh reality of the path that lay ahead. But despite the danger, Ethan knew one thing for certain. He wouldn't let anything happen to Nara. They would face this fight together, no matter what it took. The dim light of dawn filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the room. Ethan had barely slept, his mind racing with everything that had happened. The night had been long, filled with revelations and plans, and despite the weight of their situation, he couldn't shake the feeling that something even darker was waiting for them. Nara, however, seemed more at peace. She sat by the window, looking out over the palace gardens. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something about her posture, something that told Ethan she wasn't as calm as she appeared. She was preparing for something he couldn't yet understand. Ethan stood up and walked over. To her, his mind still caught on the glowing crystal they had seen the night before. The heart of Zenthari. It was more than just an artifact. It was a symbol of everything at stake. He had never imagined that his life could become so entwined with the fate of an entire species. But now, as he looked at Nara, he realized that he had no choice but to follow her, no matter what came next. "Are you all right?" Ethan asked quietly, his voice soft but filled with concern. Nara turned to him, her eyes meeting his for the first time that morning. "I'll be fine, but we need to move quickly. The longer we stay here, the more danger we're in." Ethan nodded, though a feeling of dread lingered in his chest. He could see the determination in Nara's eyes, the same fire that had drawn him to her from the beginning. But this was different now. She wasn't just the woman he had fallen in love with. She was the heir to an empire, and her life was bound to forces much greater than anything he could comprehend. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his thoughts. "We leave the palace," Nara replied. "It's no longer safe here. My enemies know where we are, and they will be coming for us soon." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? You think they already know?" "They do," Nara said, standing up and moving toward a small chest at the foot of the bed. She opened it and pulled out 2 sets of clothes, simple garments, not the royal robes she had worn before. "They've been watching me for years. I've always known that the moment I left the palace, I'd be vulnerable. But I didn't expect it to happen so quickly." She handed 1 set of clothes to Ethan, and he began to change, his mind racing. The weight of their situation was settling in, and for the first time, he understood just how much danger they were in. This wasn't just about a political marriage, it was about survival. Nara finished changing and turned to him. "We have to go to the underground chambers beneath the palace. There's a secret passageway that leads outside. It's the only way we can escape undetected." Ethan nodded, following her lead. "Do you have a plan after that? Where will we go?" "For now we move quickly," Nara said. "We'll head to the hidden citadel. It's a place that only a few of my family members know about. If we can reach it, we'll be safe for a while." They both knew that a while wasn't enough. Their enemies would stop at nothing to find them. The stakes had grown even higher than before, and there was no way of knowing how long they could remain hidden. The journey through the palace was eerie, the halls silent and deserted. The once grand corridors, filled with opulence and history, now seemed cold and distant. Every corner felt like a trap, and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Nara led the way, her movements swift and precise. She knew this palace better than anyone, and her knowledge gave them an edge. They passed through hidden doors and long, narrow hallways that Ethan hadn't even known existed, each step bringing them closer to their goal. Despite the urgency, Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This was a world he never expected to be a part of, and yet here he was, following the woman he loved into the unknown. Finally, they reached the underground chambers. The entrance was hidden behind a massive tapestry, and Nara moved it aside with practiced ease. She gestured for Ethan to follow her, and they descended into the dark. The air was cool and musty as they made their way deeper into the hidden passageway. Ethan could barely see in the dim light, but he trusted Nara to guide them. He was starting to realize just how much she had been hiding from him. She was strong, capable, and determined, but there was a weight to her actions, a sense of responsibility. That made her seem older than her years. "I didn't expect this to happen so soon," Nara said, breaking the silence. "I thought we had more time." Ethan's voice was quiet but steady. "What do you mean?" "The rebellion," Nara said, her tone growing darker. "The ones who want to take over the throne, they've been waiting for a chance to strike. And now, with the heart of Zinthari and the Orcs stones in play, they'll stop at nothing to take control." Ethan could feel the tension in the air. He understood now that this wasn't just a political game. This was a fight for survival, and the stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. As they moved through the passage, Nara paused for a moment, listening intently. Ethan could hear nothing but the soft echo of their footsteps. "We're close," Nara whispered. "The passage will lead us to a secret exit. From there we can make our way to the hidden citadel." Suddenly a loud noise echoed through the tunnel, footsteps, faint at first, but growing closer. Nara's eyes widened in panic, and she grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him toward a small alcove. "Hide!" she whispered urgently. "They've found us." Ethan's heart raced as he crouched behind the stone wall, his breath shallow. He could hear the footsteps growing louder and then the sound of a door creaking open. There was no mistaking it now. Someone was down here with them. Nara's grip tightened on his arm, and he felt a rush of fear. This was no longer just about getting away from the palace. It was about surviving. They couldn't afford to be caught. The footsteps paused near the entrance to the passage, and then a voice spoke. "Are you sure they came this way?" the voice asked. It was low, almost too quiet to hear. "Yes," another voice responded. "We tracked them to this chamber. They can't be far." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He couldn't let them find them. Not now. He glanced at Nara, and she nodded silently, understanding what had to be done. The moment the footsteps moved past them, Nara sprang into action. She pulled Ethan from their hiding spot and gestured for him to move quickly. They dashed down the hallway, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the stone walls. Behind them, the voices continued to grow louder, and Ethan could hear the faint hum of weapons being drawn. The soldiers were closing in. Nara led him to a small door at the end of the tunnel. She pressed a hidden button, and the door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a narrow passage leading outside. "Go!" Nara urged, pushing Ethan forward. Ethan stepped through the door, and Nara followed closely behind. They emerged into the cool night air, the sounds of the palace fading behind them. They had made it out, barely. As they ran through the darkness, Ethan's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. They were no longer in the palace, but they were far from safe. Their enemies would be hunting them, and the heart of Zenthari was still out there, waiting to be discovered. But for the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan felt a sense of clarity. He was with Nara, and together they had a chance. They would fight, and they would survive. "Where to now?" Ethan asked, his voice low. "To the hidden citadel," Nara said, her eyes filled with determination. "It's the only place we'll be safe for now." They ran through the night, knowing that their journey had only just begun. There would be battles ahead, and dangers they couldn't yet imagine. But one thing was certain: Ethan and Nara would face them together, no matter what it took. The night air was cool as they made their way through the dense forest, the trees towering above them like silent giants. Ethan's breath came in quick, shallow gasps as he and Nara ran, their footsteps crunching on the dry leaves beneath them. The hidden citadel was not far now. They had to make it there, or all would be lost. Nara's face was set in determination, her eyes scanning the path ahead as they pushed forward. She had always been calm, always composed, but Ethan could sense the fear she was trying so hard to hide. This was no longer just about escaping the palace. It was about the future of her people, her family, and the galaxy itself. Ethan's mind raced as they ran, the weight of their mission bearing down on him. He had always believed that his life was simple, that love and peace were possible in a world of endless conflict. But now, as he ran beside Nara, he realized just how wrong he had been. They were caught in a war far greater than they could have ever imagined, and the stakes had never been higher. "Almost there," Nara said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. Ethan nodded, his eyes scanning the dark forest. He knew they couldn't stop until they reached the hidden citadel. Their enemies were already on their trail, and every moment they delayed was another moment they could be caught. After what felt like an eternity, the trees parted, revealing a massive stone wall covered in moss and vines, the hidden citadel. It was hidden well, its entrance nearly impossible to find without knowing exactly where to look. But Nara knew. She always knew. Nara moved forward and pressed a hidden panel on the side of the wall. The stone shifted, revealing a narrow, dark passageway. She turned to Ethan and nodded. "This way," she said. Ethan followed her inside, his eyes struggling to adjust to the dim light. The passage was narrow and winding, leading them deeper into the earth. The air smelled stale, and the walls were lined with strange symbols, some of which Ethan couldn't even begin to understand. It was as if this place had been forgotten by time itself. They moved in silence, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. Ethan's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. What would happen when they reached the citadel? Would they be able to hide there long enough to regroup? And what about the heart of Zenthari? The Orc stones? He couldn't stop thinking about how much was riding on this mission. Finally, they reached the heart of the hidden citadel, a large, open chamber filled with ancient artifacts and relics from Zenthari's past. The walls were lined with glowing crystals, casting a soft, ethereal light that illuminated the room. In the center stood a massive stone pedestal, and on it rested the heart of Zenthari, the glowing crystal that held the power to change the fate of the galaxy. Nara stepped forward, her face filled with awe and reverence. Ethan followed closely behind, his heart pounding in his chest. He had seen the heart of Zenthari before, but this time it felt different. There was something more powerful, more dangerous about it now. "This is it," Nara whispered. "This is what they're after." Ethan nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. The heart of Zenthari wasn't just a symbol of power. It was the key to unlocking a secret that could change the balance of power across the galaxy. If their enemies got their hands on it, everything they had fought for would be lost. "We need to protect it," Ethan said, his voice firm. "We will," Nara replied, her voice steady. "But we need the Orcs stones to unlock its full power. Without them, it's just a relic. And if my enemies find out we're here..." Nara's voice trailed off, and Ethan knew what she meant. If their enemies found them now, they would stop at nothing to take the heart of Zenthari. And Nara, as the rightful heir to the throne, would be their first target. Before they could say another word, they heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Nara's head snapped around, her eyes wide with fear. "They've found us," she whispered. Ethan felt a surge of panic, but he forced himself to stay calm. They couldn't let fear take over now. They had to be smart. They had to fight. For Nara, for her people, for the future. "We can't let them take the heart," Ethan said, his voice low but determined. Nara nodded, her hand gripping the hilt of a hidden weapon at her side. "I know, but we won't fight alone. Just..." Then the chamber door burst open and a group of soldiers poured in. They wore dark armor, their faces hidden behind helmets. At the front of the group stood a tall, imposing figure, one that Ethan recognized immediately. It was Rayler, a high-ranking member of Nara's family, someone she had once trusted. He had always been a loyal servant to her father, but now, standing in front of them, he was anything but loyal. "Step aside, Princess," Rayler said, his voice cold and commanding. "This is over. The heart of Zenthari belongs to the people, not to you." Nara's eyes flashed with anger. "You betrayed us, Rayler," she said, her voice shaking with fury. "You've always wanted power, and now you've come to take it. But you'll never have it." Rayler smirked, stepping forward. "You don't understand, Nara. This isn't about power. This is about survival. My people have suffered because of your father's foolish decisions. You've led them to ruin." Nara stood tall, her voice filled with confidence. "I will never let you destroy everything my family built. The heart of Zenthari is not a weapon for you to wield. It's a symbol of hope, of unity. You'll never control it." Rayler's expression hardened. "Then you leave me no choice. The heart will be mine, whether you like it or not." As Rayler raised his hand, the soldiers moved forward, weapons drawn. But Nara was faster. She leaped into action, drawing her own weapon from its sheath. Ethan followed her lead, his heart racing as he prepared for what was to come. The first soldier lunged at Nara, but she easily sidestepped, her blade slicing through the air. Ethan rushed forward, tackling one of the soldiers to the ground. The sound of metal clashing filled the air as they fought back to back, each strike more desperate than the last. Rayler watched them for a moment, his cold eyes never leaving Nara. He had underestimated her, and now he was paying the price. The soldiers faltered, unsure of what to do in the face of such fierce resistance. Nara fought with everything she had, her movements swift and precise. She was a skilled warrior, trained from a young age to defend her kingdom, and now that training was paying off. With each enemy she defeated, the soldiers began to lose their confidence. But Rayler wasn't finished yet. He stepped forward, his eyes burning with fury. "This isn't over, Nara," he growled. "You will pay for your defiance." Nara locked, eyes with him. "No, Raylor, you're the one who will pay." With a final powerful strike, Nara disarmed Raylor, sending his weapon clattering to the floor. She stood over him, her blade at his throat. "End it," Raylor spat, his voice full of hate. But Nara hesitated. She looked down at him, her expression conflicted. This man had once been like family to her, but now he was nothing more than an enemy. She knew she couldn't let him go, but she also knew that taking his life would make her no better than him. "No," Nara said, her voice steady. "You'll be taken back to the palace and tried for your crimes. Your plans end here." With that, Nara lowered her weapon, signaling the soldiers to restrain Raylor. They quickly moved to comply, dragging him away from the pedestal where the heart of Zenthari rested. Ethan stood beside Nara, breathing heavily. The fight was over. For now. They had won. But there was no time to rest. They had only just begun. "We have to leave," Nara said, her voice filled with urgency. "We can't stay here any longer." Ethan nodded, understanding. They had taken the first step, but the journey was far from over. The war for the heart of Zenthari was just beginning, and they would have to fight for everything they believed in. As they left the hidden citadel, Ethan knew that there was no turning back. The battle for Nara's people, for their love, and for the future of the galaxy had only just begun.